Hello and welcome to Oceania Weekly. I'm Stephanie Greenfield. A growing number of Koreans are emigrating, citing the spluttering economy and poor education. According to the Foreign Ministry of Korea, 2,200 people emigrated last year, up around 5 times from 2016, the most since the financial crisis in 2008. The wealthy blame political and economic woes at home, while middle-class Koreans cited difficulties educating children in Korea. The amount of money spent on real estate overseas is also on the rise. According to Bank of Korea data released recently, Koreans spent $625 million last year on real estate overseas. The Korean government says that the spike in people reporting they have moved overseas is merely due to regulations that allow them to receive their national pension in a lump sum since May of 2018. North Korea threatened South Korea with dire consequences over the purchase of cutting-edge F-35A stealth fighter jets from the US. An official from the North Korean Foreign Ministry said the purchase of the jets is a direct challenge to an inter-Korean military agreement signed in September 2018 and threatened to develop special armaments to completely destroy them. North Korea is currently incapable of shooting down an F-32 stealth fighter, but is reportedly developing a radar system that is capable of detecting them. Chinese state media reported that a JY-26 long-range three-dimensional radar in Shandong province succeeded in detecting an F-22 stealth fighter that was flying over South Korean airspace. China's radar can also detect stealth aircraft from 500 kilometers away by tracking heat from jet engines. On Thursday, the US Forces Korea said that North Korea's Hwasong-15 ballistic missile is capable of striking anywhere in the continental US. The North Korea test launched the Hwasong-15 in November 2017. According to the US Forces Korea's 2019 Strategic Digest, any part of the US mainland is within the range of 8,000 miles or about 12,800 kilometers. South Korea also said in last year's defense white paper that the missile has a range of more than 10,000 kilometers. A military source here said the US Forces Korea's estimate is based on comprehensive analysis of intelligence data collected from satellite, aircraft and radar surveillance of missile launches. But the report did not say whether the missile's re-entry into the atmosphere was successful in the November 2017 test. Australia has taken another step to escalate its dispute with India's continuing sugar subsidies, which the government says threaten a $2 billion export industry. After formally initiating action in the World Trade Organization in February, Australia has now joined with Brazil and Guatemala to ask for the body to set up a dispute resolution panel. It says India's subsidies have contributed to a global sugar glut and hurt Australian farmers. Despite the escalation of the dispute, Trade Minister Simon Birmingham insists Australia's relationship with India remains robust. An Australian government statement says that Australia's relationship with India is strong. The government says the sugar industry supports more than 40,000 jobs, mainly in regional communities. 900 people have registered for the first gun buyback event being held in Christchurch this weekend. Canterbury District Commander Mike Johnson said that it's a bit of an unknown and a bit of a journey for us. Law reform in April has banned most military-style semi-automatics and components after the Christchurch terror attacks. 260 events will be held around New Zealand in the buyback scheme. Security measures have been ramped up and armed police will be present to ensure the safety of the public handing their firearms over and for the staff administrating the event. Minority advocates say that the new Race Relations Commissioner needs to stop being a politician and start fighting the battle against race abuse and discrimination. Retiring Gisborne Mayor Meng Foon has been announced as the next Race Relations Commissioner, taking over from Dame Susan Devoy, who stepped down more than a year ago. The Human Rights Commission works to encourage equal employment opportunities and resolve complaints about discrimination and related issues. Meng Foon spent 18 years as Mayor of Gisborne. He speaks Cantonese and Te Reo fluently. Justice Minister Andrew Little said Mr Foon had an outstanding record as a relationship builder. More than 60 birds have died after falling from the sky in a suspected case of poisoning in South Australia, BBC reported. The animals, 2 species of corella, were discovered near a sports ground in Adelaide last Tuesday and Wednesday. At least 57 of the birds were long-billed corellas, which is a protected species. The deaths are being investigated by Australian government departments. Some of the birds were found in distress and taken to 2 veterinarians, but they were unable to be saved. The state's Department of Environment and Water said the cause was not yet confirmed. Tourists to Australia's Uluru have drawn controversy for seeking to climb the sacred Indigenous site in the months ahead of the ban on the practice. Photos circulating online show lines of people snaking up Uluru, with some social media users comparing it to recent scenes on Mount Everest. It has been criticised as disrespectful to Aboriginal people who have long asked tourists not to climb. Locals say the tourists are dumping waste and camping illegally nearby. In 2017, the board of the Uluru Kata Te Juta National Park voted unanimously to end the climb because of the spiritual significance of the site. The ban will come into effect in October. The giant red monolith, known previously as Ayers Rock, has seen a rise in visitors since the decision was announced. Camel milk production has become one of Australia's emerging agricultural industries as demand for the product grows both locally and internationally. There are now thought to be more than 1.2 million in the wild, which is considered to be the world's largest feral population. They are mostly the dromedary or Arabian camel, which has 1 hump and is the species chosen for milk production. Australia also has a small wild population of the 2-humped Bactrian camel. Australia's first camel dairies opened in 2014, and since then the industry has grown considerably, with dairies now operating in almost every state and territory. Stewart Island locals are confident they can become the largest inhabited island in the world to eradicate pests. The Department of Conservation has signed a memorandum of understanding with 12 groups, including iwi and councils, to develop a strategy. Local councillor Bruce Ford says the island, also known as Rakiura, is famous for its bird life, and that needs to be protected. He suggests it could even triple the number of bird life if pests are eradicated. He said many visitors can come to Stewart Island and see native birds, but that's not easy. Ford says there has been a lot of rats around this year because of the warm season. Minister of Conservation said it was an ambitious vision to back nature. It is known that making Wellington's Central Library earthquake safe could cost more than $100 million. The Wellington Central Library building was closed in March following engineering advice. The council says detailed plans and costs are at least a year away. Mayor Justin Lester said it was his first priority to strengthen the existing building rather than to pull it down. Mr. Lester said initial advice showed getting it 100% to code would likely require base isolation and that all options were expensive. Mr. Lester said he is not interested in partnering with a private developer to bring down the costs of strengthening or rebuilding. This is because libraries were a public service and should remain in public ownership. Now we're going to cross over to Voice of America.
In the pitch-black hours of the early morning, a boatload of refugees from northeastern Congo arrives on Uganda's side of Lake Albert. Aid workers said the number of DRC refugees fleeing armed conflict has more than doubled since June to about 300 per day. Refugee Gipato Margaret says there has been intensive fighting in the last 2 weeks in the Congolese town of Chomia.
There are so many soldiers, yet the enemy rebel groups are in the surrounding forests. If they find a person in the garden, they kill you. They completely finish you. And when they see government soldiers, they follow and kill them. It was too much. There's a lot of gunfire nearby and staying there got difficult. So we had to find a way out.
Refugee Joshua Oshaki lost contact with his wife during fighting in the DRC's Ituri region, but managed to escape with his 2 children.
We got here in the night. We travelled with children and other people. We moved in the cold. The children are suffering. We are hungry. We've lost property, clothes and money. We do not have peace in Congo.
Fighting over land, mineral wealth and politics has raged in eastern Congo for more than 2 decades. Uganda works with the UN refugee agency, UNHCR, to register and transport new arrivals to camps that already shelter over 1 million refugees, 350,000 of them from the DRC. The UNHCR's deputy representative to Uganda, Camel, says the influx of refugees is straining their funding.
It's about 17% of all the needs that need to be covered. So this new influx is definitely challenging. You know, we're short of funds for the assistance that they need immediately, life-saving assistance upon arrival.
The World Food Programme says it is managing to provide aid for the new refugees, but warns its budget won't last long.
At this point in time, we are scheduled to run out of food and cash by September, and so we do urgently need new contributions in order to ensure that we can continue to feed the refugees.
Meanwhile, there seems no end to the flow of DRC refugees fleeing for safety to Uganda. Halima Athmani for VOA News on the shore of Lake Albert, Uganda.
Thank you for joining us here at Oceania Weekly. I'll see you next week.